This white king needs to get in front. Let's see. Takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves. Get to C1. Really, probably just needs 4. Get to D2. Let's see. If the king just runs, it cannot catch the pawn. Because this pawn could be here, and the king still cannot catch it. Let's see how the book refers to this position. Move is king g5. Then wait. Okay, so after king g5, d3, f4. Oh, wait a minute. F4, c2, say e. No. King f4, c2, rook c8, king b3, king e3, king b2, king d2. Okay. Yeah, so you have to do that rook move to buy your king a couple extra moves to intercept the pawn. Got it. White king has arrived just in time. How do I go back to... Okay. Now we have a king here, a rook here, a king here, and a pawn here. White to move. This position is very easy to solve on the basis of the same principles as the previous one. With this, we can complete our view of this. So apparently this exact position is white to move. It's only a draw if the king is on one of these squares. Anything else and white wins if the king is not on one of these marked squares. And in every other case, if played perfectly, of course, white will win. The king tempo to arrive. The king 5 tempo to arrive on time to control promotion, where black needs 4 to secure it. If white arrives on time, he has the turn. So from here, it's king e6, e3, king d5, e2, king d4, king f3, king d3, king f2, king d2. That was a total of 5 king moves for white. Okay, yeah, so if there's black's move, black will just win because white needs that extra move. But since black needs to have needs 4 moves to get his pawn to e2 and his king to f2, so then they can control E1, promote to a queen, and force the trade and save a draw. This is white move. The white king has just enough time to get to E1. So now we're going to talk about defending king on the third rank cut off along a rank. Let me set it up. In the corner, rook on g7, king on a6, no, b6, and a pawn on a5. Running the king off is very useful when the defender's king is on the third rank. And it wins straight away when we are dealing with a rook's pawn or when the king and the pawn are separated. Otherwise, the king can go around his pawn. In the diagram, both circumstances occur, so cutting the king off wins. White's king is so far away that this is the only way to win. So the rook goes to g5. Plan is to see that the white king cannot arrive in time. So a4, king g7, a3. Oh, wait. Oh. So in this case, the pawn is too far away from the king, so rook just goes to g3. And the king cannot get to it in time, and if he runs, just go to rook a3. So this would be different if the pawn was on b5, because the king could go to a5 and use the pawn as a shield to get past the rook's line of sight. However, that might be enough time to buy our king ways to get down. Actually, let me see something. This pawn is on b5 instead. We'll try the same thing. Rook here, king here, here. Let's see. We keep racing the king. Let's say rook to g3 or g2. King here, pawn here. Rook here, king here. I don't think we have enough moves. Let me try this. Did I play this improperly? It's a draw. So, cutting the king off series are like little mini equations I see in my book here. We have this, this. So cutting off the king is decisive. So just putting the rook here just insta wins. Because the king cannot move forward, and the pawn just has to go, and when it gets too far, the rook can just go, say, g1 over and take. Or after the rook here, the pawn goes here, and rook just goes to g3, pawn has to run, rook goes to b3. However, if the pawn is here, cutting it off is not decisive, but only rook g5 still wins, because you can put the rook here. But the king needs time to cut across. So actually, let's play this out. Rook g5, king b6, 7, king a5, king f6, king a4. King e5, pawn before. King d4, king a. Well, yeah, push the pawn. King here, king. Rook goes to g2. And then rook will go to b2 and just take the pawn. Turning off is not decisive, but rook g5 still wins. If the pawn is on the 5th rank, and the king was on the 6th rank. However, if we go back to this, we just move these guys up 1, there's not enough time. Or actually, like this. It's white to move. It's a draw, because there's not enough time for the king to come all the way down to b2 or b1. Okay, so now, next is going to focus on the toughest and most frequent scenario, the struggle between two kings. So let me set this up. With a strong king behind the pawn like this. Like this. So here the main defensive resource is under promoting to a knight, whereas the main attacking motif is going around. So from here, I can go h4 check, king c3, king c5, b3, rook h3, king c2, I'm assuming king c4, b2, rook h2, king c1, and if king goes to c2, then the pawn can under promote to a knight with a check. Yeah, so if king c3 under promote to a knight should be a draw. Because I've covered rook and knight endgames before. As long as you can keep the knight close to your king and you're not in the corner, which it's not, you should save the draw as black in this scenario. However, if this was a rook's pawn instead of a knight's pawn, it should be lost. So that saves the game by an under promotion to a knight. Now we also have what the book calls outflanking. Just pushing the king brings nothing, but when the attacking king is behind the pawn, you must outflank. Rook h5. Oh, apparently, so one thing that differs with this one from the other one is that the kings are on one file, no, one rank or row higher. So apparently, this allows the white king to just enough time to outflank. So let's see what this goes to. Rook h5, king d4, king c6. This new resource allows the strong king to lift the blockade. My king will go around, so c4, king b5, c3, king b4, c2, rook c5. Rook h1 also wins. King d3, king b3. The pawn is lost. If king d2, king b2, it doesn't matter. The pawn will be taken. Rook, yeah, rook h1 also works. Yeah, white controls the queen square. However, I want to go to this. If you do this, this should not allow for an outflank. If we try the same thing, there's not enough time. But it does work here. Give the check. It's here. Yeah, that's winning for white. If we do this one, yeah, there's not enough time. Summary of ideas. Pushing the defending king from the rear does not work against B, C, D, E, F, and G pawns. Un's promotion to a knight saves the day. In those cases, outflanking is the right way. The strong king has no time to outflank his opponent when the pawn is on the 5th rank, unless the rook is at the rear of the pawn. With the knight's pawn, stalemate themes can occur. So it also has a couple sample positions like this. This is a draw no matter who moves. Unpronounce to a knight saves black. If the rook was on h1 like this instead, white wins if he has the move. But then, move them all back like this, white wins because the king can outflank. If it's white to move, wins. Black to move, draw. Outflanking, the rook is best placed on the marked squares, which is h8 and h1. If white wins, even if black has the move, if the rook is on one of those squares. And if we have this, white wins no matter who moves, because there's just so much time to outflank. And that's just if the strong king, is behind the pawn. What about the king on a side, such as this? Never mind. The rook needs support from the king to control and capture the enemy pawn. That's why the defending king should always stand in the way of the pawn, if possible. Shouldering is always an interesting resource. It becomes critical when the stronger side's king is approaching from the side. So in this scenario, king can go to g4. Visually the best move, not the only way to win. King's trying to reach g3 on the next move and push the king. Threat is rook e1 check. So king e3 and king g3. The king moves down. we just simply take the pawn, so he has to move d3. Rook e1 check, king d2, and then I can play king f2. Wait, so after king f2, say king goes to c2. I mean, without pulling up analysis, if king goes to e3, pawn to d2, rook goes to e2, and pin the pawn of the king. King c2, king e3, the best. H1 is another good one. Well, I mean, if d2, then king e2. Rook h1, rook g1, king e3. Yeah, okay. Got it. Now the book's talking about a time-gaining check. The rook and pawn ending is usually a struggle between the kings. The rook appears on certain occasions, but not without effect. Okay, just let me set this up. This is a rook on a8, king on c4, king on 2, and a pawn g4. This is a typical scenario. Black king occupies an optimal position. Therefore, there's no time to lose. Mind the enemy king, do not deliver this check if he can improve his position. So rook f8, check. Other moves only draw, so king e2, rook g8, king f3, king d3. To start the whole shoulder charging maneuver again. On g3, rook f8 check, king g2, and king e2. So check goes here, goes here. If he just went rook g8 off the rip, then the pawn could just advance. With that first check, I mean, if the king moves in front of the pawn, it has to move anyway to get out of the way. And plus, he's not really blockading our king at all. Okay. Here's an example of a perfect combination of the two attacking resources when both kings stand at the same side of the pawn. Rook a2 check. Followed by king f3, rook a8, pawn e3, rook f8, king e2, king g2 for that same shoulder charge. So when both kings are on the same side of the pawn, the main resources are shoulder charging and rook checks. With a normal rook position, the strong side wins if his king takes side opposition before the pawn reaches the 6th rank. Now if the rook is in front of the pawn, now we have king here, pawn here, rook here, and king here. This famous ready composition illustrates a Zugzwang position that holds theoretical value. So the rook goes to e2 instead of e1. So apparently if rook e1, then e4. But why can't he just play e4 anyway? If he plays e4, then we play rook e1? Okay, this is interesting. Black cannot keep the opposition. It's a mutual Zugzwang. Oh, wait a minute. So if we go rook e1 anyway, then pawn e4, say we go here, then this is a lot better for black because he has a tempo on our rook. But if we go rook e2 first, then he moves the pawn, then we move the rook to e1. Now if the pawn moves forward, we take it, and the king moves forward. Now we can move in with our king. Rook e1, king e5, king e7, maintain opposition. King f4, king d6, f3, d5, e3, king d4. King goes here. Wait, I think the rook can go to h1. So now if we go here, if we give a check, goes here. Am I missing something? Go to a1, pawn goes here. Goes here, he promotes and forces the draw. Oh, I just take the pawn, I'm stupid. So then the pawn has to go here. And we just, yeah, it's, okay. Yeah, again, the right move. Yes, that's what I was just saying. I was so focused on like moving the rook out of the way or something. Yeah, you just take the pawn and that's. Also, welcome on in, man. I appreciate it. But anyway, but yeah, from this scenario, this position, you go to e2 first, then after the pawn moves, then you move to e1, putting black in Zugzwang. You maintain the opposition like this, and once he moves to f4, that allows your king to come in and outflank the pawn. From here, if king f2, then just take. And then if e2, then pawn's lost anyway. But yeah, like at the beginning, like from here, rook e1 just seems like such a natural move. But it actually draws. After this, you move here, then there's not enough time. Because the black gets a tempo here. Neat. Okay. All right, next scenario looks like this. Pawns near the edge of the board have their own rules, especially the rook's pawn. However, there's a lot about the knight's pawn as well. There are stalemates that stay with the defender. Okay. So from this, there's a time gaining check with rook check here. King b3. Start to bring the king down. 7, b4, king d6. And this is a key move. White king approaches the pawn, but at the same time hinges the black king's way from the right side of the knight's pawn. Oh, so ideal scenario for black, it means that for the king to come out from in front of the pawn, they prefer to go towards the center of the board instead of on the edge. I think that makes sense. King c6 allows king c4. So after king d6, black can play king a2, king c5, b3, king b4, b2, rook a7 check. With any other pawn, the black king could move left, but now he has to obstruct the pawn with king b1. But white has to be careful here. Well, yeah. King b3, c1, c7 check. King has to move back. Apparently the move is rook b7. Oh, that actually makes sense. King c1, king a2. Take the pawn. Okay, so if it's a knight's pawn or a rook's pawn, and you can force his king in front of it, then the black's chances are dramatically reduced. Okay, that's neat. Now we have the rook's pawn pushing from the rear, like this. From here, white can just go rook h4, followed by king b3, king b5, a3, rook h3 check, king b2, king b4, a2, rook h2 check, king b1. But if there's more in the center of the board, then if king b3, then the pawn under promotes to a knight. And that saves the draw for black. But king b3, I don't think it works here, because if you under promote to a knight like this, you can go to king c3. Knight is lost, so... Oh, I see. So if black king moves here, this is mate. And if that's the only king move, and if the knight moves, it just gets taken. So under promoting to a knight only works... Well, it does not work if it's a rook's pawn. King pushing from the rear is very effective against a rook's pawn in combination with rook checks. Not so effective against other pawns. For now, if it's a rook's pawn with a lateral push, like this. The rook's pawn cannot save the game by under-promoting to a knight, but there are stalemate chances to make up for this. So we go rook b8 check, king a1. Now the rook has to move, or it's a stalemate. That was me rubbing my eye. King a1, rook a8, king b2, b8 check, rook c8. So there's really nothing to do to win that as white. But what if we take this and we set it up like this, just put one rank like that. Book calls this the extreme position. In a rook versus rook's pawn ending, this is a key position you have to learn by heart. Most positions with no clear winner end up in this situation during analysis. With black to move, it's a draw. If it's white to move, he has rook b8 check and it wins. So with black to move, they can move king b2, rook b8 check, king c1, king c3, a2, rook a8, king b1. More or less the same thing, isn't it? Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like, there's so many different nuances, like a rook versus pawn on the rook file versus the knight's file versus a center file. It's just so many different rules, and that just makes up why chess is like one of the most complicated games like ever, despite the fact that it doesn't really change. It's quite fascinating, actually. And that's if, again, if rook check. I don't think, is that a blunder? I think you're supposed to move here, because if you go here, yeah, that's a terrible move, because the rook just goes here, and well, yes, it's still really bad. Because you're threatening mate, so you're supposed to go in the corner. And if he goes somewhere else, wait. Then what if it goes here? Your only move is here. Wait, did I miss something? Hold on. King goes to b1. Rook check. If king goes to c1, go here. Oh wait, you just promote. I'm stupid. Promote with check, by the way. You cannot do that. So you have to go back to A to watch that pawn, but then he just goes back. You give another check. And no matter where he goes, you more or less have to. What if he goes to A1? Then I think you can do this, and it's just mate 1. Yeah, so the correct move here is for black is actually to move to C1. And there's the draw. So that's if it's black to move. I don't think it gives me if it's white to move, but that's okay. Because if it's white to move, instead, Then give a check. Goes in front. You can move here. He moves here. Then you say rook h8. If here, that's mate. And if he goes back, you just go here, forcing him back in the corner, and that's mate. You give that check. He goes here. But then you can just do that. He has to move, say, if he moves here, that just loses the pawn. If he pushes the pawn, you just go here. He has to move here, take the pawn. Okay. Rook's pawn is not worse than others against a lateral king push, thanks to stalemate chances, says my book. So move him up like this. It's a draw no matter who moves because black can easily stalemate. In this one, if white to move, he wins. Black to move, it's a draw. But move him up one more, white wins no matter who has the move. All right. Now we have something else. When the pawn can win against the rook. So for everything I've covered so far, it's how to defend against an opposing pawn from promoting. But now, here's a scenario how you can get the pawn to win against the rook. So a pawn here, king here, a black rook here, and a king here. If the side having a rook is to move, given the positions occupied by both kings and the pawn, there are just two squares where the rook loses. The two marked, which are f5 and b5. The winning sequence is long but clear. The first move has to be a rook check, hindering immediate promotion. f6, king d5 is the move, not d7. If king moves to d7, then black has rook f1. Let's say you promote, say you queen, check, king has to go here, check. That's a draw. So king d5, not d7. f5 check, king d4, f4, king d3, rook f3, king c2, king f2, king... Wait. d3, rook f3. It was king c2, not d2. Rook f2 check, king b3. Now the king hides on the b7 square without trouble. Rook f3 check. King b4. Rook f4. 5. f5. King b6. Rook f6. King b7. Wait, what? Okay, check. What if he goes to the c file early? What if he goes to the c4 from here? What is... Let's see. Also, why not just move here first? Check. Go here. Am I missing something? Let's see. Rook f6. If king c5 off the rip, then rook goes to f2. Okay, so f6. And the rook chases the king like this. Oh, I see. You do this song and dance all the way down the board, so that when you get on the c file, the rook cannot move to f1 and threaten to skewer your king to your then newly promoted queen. That's interesting. Again, check. If you go early, he has this. But if you make him chase you all the way down like this, there's no threat of a skewer. Huh. Apparently, black also loses if the rook is on the b5 square, and the sequence is similar. Well, I mean, you just need to get the rook out of dodge. Then you just promote, I think. Yeah, rook e3, promote, there you go.